Who knows? In a democracy, citizens need good information in order to make decisions. That's especially true in a democracy like that of classical Athens, where all the citizens could meet in an assembly to take a decision. Thousands of citizens would gather here on the Pnyx to debate and discuss important issues, such as whether the city should go to war. But how did they get the information they needed to make their decisions? Did they know enough to choose correctly? Might they be wrongly influenced by a charismatic speaker and make a poor decision? This question was of concern to historians such as Thucydides, who wrote an account of Athens in the late 5th century BC, covering the Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta. There'd been a break in that war, and there'd been peace in the city for several years, but the Athenians were starting to get a little bit restive. There was a new generation eager to have new experiences, to go to war, to gain honor for themselves. And so when some ambassadors came from a city in Sicily asking for help in a local dispute, the Athenians began to develop a plan to make a major expedition to that island. The same winter, the Athenians were again wanting to sail to Sicily and subjugate it if they could. Most of them were unfamiliar with the size of the island and the large number of inhabitants there, and were unaware that they were taking on a war on almost the same scale as that against the Peloponnesians. Thucydides represents a situation where a decision was being made with less than perfect information, and in making the decision, the citizens were unduly influenced by the views of the speakers who addressed them in an assembly meeting. 2 debates took place. It's an interesting feature of Athenian democracy that the Athenians were willing to go and revisit decisions that, in the cold light of the following day, didn't seem to be, on the whole, the best choice. So a second debate took place in which opposing views are represented in Thucydides' account by the older general and politician Nicias, who represents a cautious perspective, and the charismatic youthful Alcibiades. Nicias makes the point that they shouldn't be getting involved in this, and they haven't really thought it through and looked at all the details. Alcibiades, on the other hand, emphasizes the importance of activity. A city that is inactive wears itself out from within, just like anything else, and all its knowledge will diminish with age. But when it is exercised in adversity, it will keep adding to its experience. So in Alcibiades' perspective, it's possible that even going into something which isn't going to go well could have benefits in the long run because you'll learn from it. The problem was that the city decided to send a large fleet, 60 warships like this one, and a full supporting crew, a very long way, to engage with a battle that was happening across the entire island of Sicily, where many cities were eager to participate in disruption as a range of local hostilities coalesced into a larger conflict. And the Athenians, feeling that there was an opportunity for them to get hold of some of the fabulous wealth of the Sicilian cities, were keen to do this and talked themselves into undertaking an expedition that probably wasn't in their wisest interests. After the defeat of the expedition, a couple of years later, Athens was tipped into political unrest and the democracy was overthrown. Thucydides' account of this debate and the war which followed and its consequences served as an example of how democracy might not work well and this was taken up by critics of democracy in the ancient world. Plato suggested that the problem really was one of knowledge, and the solution was to restrict decision-making and political rule to experts who would be able to make good decisions on behalf of the population and ensure that the city was correctly run for the benefit of all. However, Plato's view on what constitutes knowledge was fairly philosophically oriented. Other thinkers had more practical views of what constituted the kind of knowledge that a politician needed, Xenophon, for example. But we do also see a more optimistic take on democracy and decision-making from the philosopher Aristotle. He takes the view that democracy actually has some strengths for decision-making. Where there are many, each has his share of goodness and practical wisdom, and when all meet together, the people may thus become something like a single person who, as he has many feet, many hands, and many senses, may also have many qualities of character and intelligence. So where Plato's views have often been used to support claims that experts should have a bigger say in political life, even in a democracy, Aristotle's views are still used to support arguments that we should trust the judgment of a diverse crowd of people because the differences of opinion and experience that they bring to decision making will actually result in a stronger decision because lots of different aspects will have been taken into account as everybody brings their own qualities to bear on making that decision. So for Aristotle, there is an optimistic answer to the question, but it still depends on a commitment to a communal project and shared goals. The Sicilian expedition stands as an example of what happens when that goes wrong, when politicians influence decision-making for purposes that aren't really aligned with the interests of the community, for example. So Athenian democracy remains an important and useful example for understanding political problems. Even though our own society is very different, we have a different group of people participating in politics, and they do so in different ways. But that question of political knowledge remains central to democracy of any kind.